we just discussed the scaling model and this network structure, which tells us that any of these socioeconomic indicators, whether it's income, innovation, crime, whatever it is, because the number of connections is growing more than proportionally as the population size increases, our expectation is superlinear. So why is that not happening here, right? We've done some more work, and we have some preliminary idea. Maybe I'll just wrap up this discussion with the idea that we have is that while indeed it is true that we would expect the number of connections to grow, so that doesn't change. We don't change the model of scaling to understand why this is happening. That is true. Perhaps there is also something about the value of these connections, right? So if connections at a certain distance are assigned different values, even as the network grows, which means the number of connections that you have densifies, if it means that at a certain distance, the value of those connections goes down, then it is indeed possible that in this interplay of number of connections and the value of those connections to you, right, you can indeed get sublinear scaling of crime, right? So as the size of the city increases, right? So for instance, if anyone who's read B.R. Ambedkar, when he talks about the village as a den of violence and ignorance, and he speaks about cities as being emancipatory because they offer anonymity, and that in a sense captures this this term that I'm using, value of a connection, right? In a smaller place, in a village or in a small city, it's easier for you to identify, your co-ethnic or your co-caste member. It becomes much more difficult in a larger city. So the value of a connection is much higher in a smaller city because identification is easier. It's much more difficult in a larger city where identification is much more difficult. You can't form those connections as easily. So if we indeed think about the interplay between these two factors, then it's possible that, despite growing number of connections, you can see sublinear scaling, or at least that's what we theorize as what might be happening in India.